It's always been the same, even before the web and social media. It's got to move you. I mean, it's either going to make you smile or invoke some sort of emotion, or I want that. It's still that. And I think advertising marketing has always been that way.
The voice you just heard is Dave Plivelich. Dave founded his company, the Marcom Group, in 1998. He's built the company into one of the most well-respected advertising agencies in the Central Valley. Over his career, he's worked with many businesses, including Rain for Rent, John Souls Food, Era Energy, Castle & Cook, Golden Empire Transit, Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce, Grimway Farms, Kern County Department of Human Services, Tejon Ranch, and the list just goes on and on. He has his hands in every aspect of the advertising trade, from sales and marketing to graphic design and web development, and so on. He is very involved in the community. He's a graduate of Leadership Bakersfield 2003, and over the years he's been involved with so many community organizations like Rotary Club and Active 2030 Club, Petroleum Club of Bakersfield, Children's Advocates Resource Endowment, also known as CARE, Victory Family Services, Epiphany Foundation. He's a partner of Kern EDC. The list goes on in the amount of community service and involvement that Dave's had. He's also co-owner of the Valley Ag Voice. That is a local regional agricultural newspaper. He was even a nominee in 2020 for the Beautiful Bakersfield's Business Person of the Year Award. I did not know that. So if you don't already know Dave, I'll tell you he's a problem solver. He'll meet any challenge that you throw at him. If he doesn't have the solution for you, he will tap into a wide range of business connections all throughout the community, and he'll find the person who does have that solution for you. On today's show, we discuss how it all started. We discuss how he started his business and how it's progressed over the years. He gives us some great information about marketing for your own business and brand. So, without further ado, stay tuned for a great all-around conversation with our newest co-host, Dave Plivelich.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
And welcome to the show today. My name is Scott Hansen. Before we get into today's episode, I want to encourage all of our followers to go check out our website at our2centspodcast.com. It's a great way to stay up to date with the show. You can check out what's going on right now. You can check out some future information. And even more important, you can go back and check out our whole catalog of shows. For example, you can find out all about our new host, Dave Plivelich. Dave, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Scott.
I'm really glad to have you here. I think we're going to have a fantastic conversation about all kinds of wide-ranging topics. You have a lot going on. You've always had a lot going on. I think the best place to start, though, is you have always been a bit of an entrepreneur, at least as long as I've known you. And then to talk to you about your history before I've known you a long time. But even before that, you have a lot of stories of interesting things that you did along the way that developed that entrepreneurial spirit. Shall we start there? Give me a little bit of background on, the early days of Dave Plivelich, and let me know how that kind of all got started.
I've always had a very curious life. I've been fortunate. I moved around a lot as a kid, but I also was very fortunate to have when I look back at it, diverse family on my mom's side and my dad's side, so aunts, cousins, uncles, they just lived different lives. And, I had a conversation the other day with somebody, talking about how, a parent can tell you one thing, but an uncle, aunt, cousin, or whatever, from an outsider, it's like you connect with that. Being a grandparent is the same way, the kid takes in more from the grandparent or an uncle and aunt or something like that than mom and dad. I got my desire to travel from a cousin, my mom's cousin and my aunt. Business entrepreneur spirit, watching, my mom's cousin, she had a business in Chicago that washed all of the U.S. mail Jeeps for the city. So I had a lot of uncles that were entrepreneurs. I had jobs early. One of my very first jobs was delivering a newspaper, and I'd have to ride my bicycle down in the snow or fog to get to the newspaper building. This was back in Clarksburg, West Virginia, home of Stonewall Jackson. I'd have to roll the papers, put them in the bags, and go deliver these papers all over town. And even from there, I usually held 2 to 3 jobs at any given time. I've had a lot of conversations with my youngest son lately about that, because he recently got let go from a job that he loved dearly. But I said, look, it's an opportunity, son. You're at your age, you're going to get to experience, go someplace else. You're going to experience a different personality of a supervisor or employees, an owner. And I got those experiences. I'm like, I'm not going to be like that guy if I own my own business. Or I took note each experience. And so that's kind of, wasn't always for money. I mean, you know me, I've a long time. I've done some stuff for absolutely nothing in exchange as far as money. I volunteer a lot of time with nonprofits or that kind of stuff. But that learning experience, I've just always wanted to learn. And so it's like I said, there was a long period of time. I had 2-3 jobs at any given time.
You know, what's crazy is I talk to so many people who are either in the management level of a company or own their own business, especially when they own their own business. And there is some kind of history of, as cliched as it may sound, a paper route or babysitting or something that was done at a very young age, and even lemonade stand and that sort of thing. And then the lemonade stand, iterates into other little sales things that are going on, Girl Scout cookies, right, or something like that. Yeah. But that getting over that maybe fear of talking to somebody, selling a subscription to something, or collecting a subscription. I know in my paper out days, it was the collection that was the hardest thing. It taught me a lot for collecting rents in my property management days. But there is that kind of common vein, it seems like. And it seems like you definitely had that. It certainly resonates with me, having come from that same kind of background.
My first job in Bakersfield, first 2 jobs, is I was pushing a La Rosa ice cream cart, and I was working at Taco Bell.
How much were La Rosas back then? Do you remember?
No, I don't. I just remember I was given the large bill folded in half, and I stuck it in my pouch real quick and gave them their ice cream and change and left. And Miss La Rosa opened up that large bill and went, "Where's the other half of it?" And that came out of my check. That's all I remember. I don't remember how much.
Yeah, well, did they have a model where you buy the whole cart and then you just
not at that time, not at that time. But apparently, I still owed for anything in the cart. But learning experience. Yeah, check those bills.
They're still looking for you at La Rosa for that last cart.
No, he took it out of my check. We're good.
So one thing leads to another, and you do get into the marketing business. For people who don't know, you're the owner of the Marcom Group, have been for a long time, since the late 90s, right, is when you started that company. What led you to marketing, though, before you even got to that point of owning a marketing business? What were you doing that led you to that?
In school, I always kind of had a knack for art, but not as a traditional artist, but more as I had an interest in commercial design. So typefaces and fonts, and not like a fine art painting. And then in high school, I was working for a buddy of mine's family, and we did typesetting, and that was early days of computers, and before personal computers. You had to type came out on a film paper, and then you had to cut it out, wax it, and glue it down, and then you took a camera and you photographed it. And so I was doing a lot of that stuff. I was working in a camera room, doing deliveries to a lot of designers and agencies here in town, and I would talk to them. There was one guy in particular I had a conversation with about 2 months ago, and I said, I remember, I made deliveries to you, and I said, well, hey, how do I get my own agency? And he's like, well, you got to go to school. Well, which school did you go to? Well, I didn't, but these days you got to go to school and get a degree. And I just wasn't in a position to do that. My mom and stepdad had moved out of town. I quit moving. I was like, nope, I'm staying here and starting my life. And so I got a job at a print shop. After that, I worked for a couple print shops. I was bartending or bar backing in the evenings. I was old enough to bartend. And then there was a radio rep that came to me, and she said, look, there's an agency that they're looking for somebody. And I'm like, well, where? And so she told me, and I would literally, on my lunch break, so again, I was working a print shop during the day, bartending at night. I'd go on my lunch break, and I'd sit in this guy's office every day for lunch for 2 weeks straight. And, receptionist would go, well, he's not coming back in from lunch today. I'm like, so after about 2 weeks, he finally walked in the door. He's like, so you're the guy that's been sitting in my office every day for lunch? I'm like, yep. Well, come on in. So he interviewed me, and he gave me my shot. And so I ended up working at an agency and moved up rather quickly. Had to learn a lot of stuff, how to learn how to work a Macintosh we had no clue about. So in the evenings, I was going to a guy's house and had a Mac. I'm like, show me how to use a Mac. And so, I had to learn that over my, 2 weeks before my job officially started. And kind of ran from there. It led into websites eventually and an opportunity for me to finally start my own agency.
And at some point you decided working for somebody else was not in the cards for the long run. What drove you to do that?
It was working for someone else was not really in my cards the whole time. It was working for somebody, just using my talents, but taking the opportunity to learn as much as I could from them during that time. So, there was an exchange. Yeah, I got money. I gave them, my work and my creative, my ability, but I was actually there to go, what can I learn from this? And so that's what I did. In fact, when I started the Marcom Group, at the same time, I started a hot rod clothing company. So I did that for a couple of years, had a partner in that, an artist, and I kind of handled the business marketing side, and he handled all he drew, I sold. So we did that for a while as well. So even having a business, it's not enough for me. I was like, okay, I got to be doing more than one thing.
Yeah.
I can't seem to do one thing.
No, I definitely get that from you. You've been involved in a lot of other organizations and foundations and all sorts of different things. So I do get that. But just the act of starting that company took quite a bit of effort. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about that and kind of some of the decision making you went through on that. And I don't know, what another common vein that I find with entrepreneurs is that the best ones have had some kind of struggle or struggles, plural, that they have dealt with, both maybe personal and or business-wise, that they overcame, right? And that's kind of what seems to be a common thread, is that there was something out there that had to be solved, and then somehow you figured out how to go solve it. And I know that some of that is just the act of starting the business to begin with. It isn't always just straightforward.
Yeah, with design, I was kind of freelancing on the side. So, I was working for this agency, but if I had a friend or somebody, it's like, hey, I need a logo. It's like, okay, well, I'll do that from home and all that. As far as starting the Marcom Group goes, that one was a lot simpler than one might think. So basically what it was, like around 1996, my boss came to me and said, hey, we got some clients on websites. And this was brand new. Websites were just starting. So I'm like, I don't know how to build websites. And so I talked to somebody I knew up in the Silicon Valley. I'm like, how do you guys build websites? And he said, well, they use EditPad or Notepad. I'm like, really? So I got this software where I could draw stuff and then flip and look at it. Anyways, I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is refreshing. So I said, boss, I want to build websites. This is awesome. This is new. It's refreshing and it's different. And he goes, well, we'll just hire somebody and you can manage them. I'm like, oh, bummer. So we did that for about a year and a half. And then that guy left. He went down to LA and he kept calling me. He's like, Dave, you got to do websites. I'm like, why? And he goes, I'm a computer scientist. Computer scientists are building websites. That's silly. That's like having a press operator design a brochure. That's not what their forte is. It's not our wheelhouse. It's delivered on a computer, but that's where that stops. And so the reason it was so easy is because my boss called me into his office and said, I think our copywriter's getting ready to quit. What do you think? And I said, I don't know. I quit. And he's like, what? I drove home my relatively new bride thinking, how am I going to tell her that I just quit my job? Oh boy. But I still went home. Yeah. I faced the music, but that's how I got it started. That's how I got started. Just the boss goes, door opened right there, and I went, I quit. It took me about a year to get back up to the salary that I was making, and within a year of that, I became partners in another company. We did an ISP, dial-up and DSL, and website hosting. So that's where I kind of learned that part of the trade too. But
I see, and now everything's internet marketing. Everything is website. Everything's social media. Social media is a whole additional layer of that's come about in the last decade, right? What I do see is a lot of people getting that website ready to go, getting all their social media set, and then they go, okay, I'm good, I'm done. And then I see that lasting about 6 months because there's some new technology. We experience it in our business. I see it, especially in the real estate business. I see it with, where people out there marketing themselves or their service or their product. And it's almost a feeling of you never arrive. You never get done adjusting and staying up with the next social media. What do you advise people about with that?
Well, if you open a brick and mortar business and then you just go, okay, here's our new business, and you're going to get the word of mouth and you're going to do a little bit of a push and people are going to come check you out, but you just don't stop there. I mean, people aren't going to keep coming. I mean, you got to keep it out there in the forefront, top of mind awareness, or, you're pushing sales or whatever your product going. You still have to get it out there in front of everybody. So people go and create a website, they'll create their social media accounts. And like you said, it's like, okay, I got that stuff. Well, if you're not actively involved in it and, posting or responding, again, the internet can be a very cold-blooded place. Somebody comes into your business, they're not going to, classic example, you're at a restaurant and you get served a dish. And with everybody at the table, we go, what do you think? What do you think? Oh, mine's a little dry. And, this sauce could be a little, or, this is a little overcooked. Server comes up and goes, how is it? And you go, oh, it's fine.
Yeah. every time. It seems like that's the answer that comes out of your mouth.
But with the internet, they'll shred you.
Yeah.
They'll go leave reviews. They'll be like, oh, I went there and that food was so overcooked and blah, blah, blah. But you can't forget about that and ignore it either. You got to respond. And when you do respond, you get better response from people that see a negative review and they'll go, oh yeah, they addressed it. You know who's really good at it? Ralph Fruletti with Frugatti's. That dude is on top of his Google reviews. People post good things, he responds. People post bad things, he responds. He communicates with those customers. So, that's a good thing to do. And again, in people with social media, if it's not in your wheelhouse to take care of that stuff yourself, hire somebody to do that, and it's okay. You don't have to be a social butterfly and know how to respond. Hire someone that does. You stick to what you do best, but you find people that do that part best. People that get their social media and all they'll respond is, hey, we've got this sale or we've got this new product. Okay, that gets boring. I just feel like I'm being asked. They want to see interactions. Like, hey, I took me and my family and we did this weekend, or we went over here. There's just more of that interaction. But again, a lot of times with social media now is you got to pay for play. So you want exposure, you got to pay. But another thing is we got friends and we go, okay, hey, help me out with my social media. I post something, can you be sure and like it? Liking it doesn't do really anything. You got to share. You got to share that because that's the only way you're going to get around.
You mean from an algorithm
standpoint?
Correct,
correct. So Facebook is you either pay or you get people to share.
I see.
And if you can't share, well, you can pay us and we'll make sure we share it for you. So
you mentioned, a lot of people, it may not be in their wheelhouse. Well, so I see two things. One is a lot of people may know how to do it and they don't have the time to do it because they are busy out there doing that thing that makes their business run. There's all that other stuff that makes their business run. You also have people who, you're right, that's just not in the wheelhouse. As much as they might have the time or the desire, they just don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Do you, is that always, outsource that immediately to get it handled, or is it go out and learn it? Is it, where would you spend your time as a business owner?
If you have an interest in it but just don't know how to do it, then yes, I would take the time to learn how to do it. Talking to a potential client yesterday, we basically interviewed each other. It's like, here's what I can do for you. Here's what you need. And we kind of feel in the waters. Is it going to be a good fit for us working together? He said, I've got somebody and that works for me and they're wanting to post for me and they're wanting to do this. And I said, how's their grammar and their spelling? And he goes, and as soon as he did that, I said, that's why you can't do that.
Good point.
Because that's going to be a reflection on you.
Well, everything that goes out, then you're giving carte blanche to your public identity, essentially, to be handled by somebody else. That is a scary thought, but you also, I hear about a lot of high level, everything from celebrities, business owners, business people, where they do completely turn that over.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really somebody else posting virtually the entire time.
Absolutely. And that's manage your brand properly, too. I'll give you examples. So one of the other companies I own is Valley Ag Voice, and I'm partners with Kyle Jones from our 2 Cents podcast and Russell Johnson here in town, who's just Russell Johnson. What can I say about Russell Johnson? He knows everybody. You want something done in this town, that's the guy.
That is true.
So unless you're going to have him whacked or something, Russell probably wouldn't do that. But, when me and Russell went up to the World Ag Expo and, we were up there for Media Day. And so the different companies and tractor companies, reach out to us and say, hey, please stop by our booth and we want to talk about our new tractors. And we go up there and we do that. And, so the sales guy comes over and he's talking about the GBR 5000 there and all those capabilities. And Russell starts to interview the guy. I'm taking pictures of the tractors. And he goes, well, what about this, this? And the guy stops and he goes, you need to talk to Mary over there, our marketing PR VP. And I just got this one quick question. You got to go talk to her. It shows you it's very controlled. Mm-hmm. They don't want just anybody delivering their message. Their message is very strict, and here's how we stick to the brand, and we're very specific in what we say. And none of those sales guys that are walking around handing out the caps and talking about the tractor, there's certain questions, you go talk to her because they need that consistent message. So again, it is okay to outsource that until if you've got an interest, learn it before you actually do it, though. So outsource it until you're comfortable enough to where you want to start doing it yourself. I could use names, but I've got a client like that. At first I don't want nothing to do with social media. Great. We'll do it all for you. And it took about a year or two, and he finally was like, oh, I think I can do this. All right, good.
Yeah.
But that was fine. But he didn't goof it up in the beginning or just have dead radio silence, for the first 2 years. He had somebody else posting for him in the meantime until he says, yeah, I got this. So
I think you bring up a great point about the food in the restaurant and the waitress example where somebody is not willing to be honest when asked point blank when the person's standing there, but then afterward they're able to get really honest all of a sudden, right? Yeah. I think that even that might some way connect or translate into the people who do like social media, because it seems like some people just really love it and they want to be on it. Yeah. They want to develop their business on social media, and it's just a natural fit for them. And then some people are very still, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, old-fashioned maybe, it just more face-to-face, sure. Does not place a ton of value on what's out there on the internet, wants to actually know the person in person, in addition to that or in lieu of that. And I wonder if the two are connected a little bit, because the best thing for that restaurant is that when the waitress asks you, how's your food, you're just honest on the spot. Honestly, that's probably the best outcome for that restaurant, is to hear about it in real time, get that feedback loop right away, make sure that everything's working in the kitchen that night or that dinner time. So in the scenario you talked about, they don't get the chance because they're not honest about it, but then they're real honest a day later when they're reviewing the place on whatever the medium, Yelp or Google. To some extent, that same kind of thing is going on a little bit in the social media world where everything's getting posted and it's hard to determine who to do business with or who to work with and who's real and who's not. Yeah. And so I wonder if there's a little bit of a connection there between the two. I don't know.
That's a good question, because you can buy fake followers. You can pay companies to leave reviews, and the way the algorithms are structured, they try to avoid that as much as possible. So, they look at things like, how many times is something being posted from this particular IP address? That's how you keep Google AdWords, if you're paying for an AdWord campaign, that your competitor just having somebody go click, 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 click. Oh, because that's what happened.
I've always wondered about that. Yeah.
That's what happened back in the day. And, but they got software where they can change IP addresses and do that. But I know Amazon and another large company not too long ago, they had to address that because they found there was a lot. I know it was Amazon. They had a lot of fake reviews. Hey, this product's great. This product's great. You look at the App Store for an iPhone app. You can tell pretty much which ones the developers have paid somebody to give great reviews, because you can tell by how bad the negative reviews are. It's like there ain't no way there's that many 1-star reviews and that many 5-star reviews. Something's fishy. So you look at the way a lot of that stuff gets worded.
Yeah, I do. And so even that is just an adaptation that's gone on, I think, is just kind of understanding. Reviews aren't just reviews like they might have been even 5 or 10 years ago. Yeah. Even that has changed a lot. So in the marketing world, what are some of these other changes that you've gone through, starting from all the way back before websites were even a thing? That was a brand new thing. To now websites, now social media. How much has it changed overall?
It's gotten harder to manipulate the system like you could back in the early days of websites. Let's go way back, early days of websites, trying to get, we didn't call it search engine marketing or SEO at the time. But, you had your homepage and you had your keywords and key phrases, and you had a dark blue background. and then you filled up the whole page down below with dark blue text of all the keywords.
Yeah.
That went on. That went on for a while.
And there really was no keywords behind the scenes. It was on the page.
On the page,
yeah.
And so, there was a lot of black hat software out there that really took advantage of search engines. And I'm trying to remember all the search engines back then.
Netscape.
Well, Netscape was a browser, Netscape
was a
browser.
Well, I guess that was a search engine.
Yeah, that was a browser. But you had Go, you had Ask Jeeves. I can't remember
that's
that.
Right.
But there were several other ones out there. Yahoo was a major player back then too. But Google changed a lot of that. Google started really understanding search engines and modifying algorithms. And I mean, you got to stay up to date with how all that works, but there's simple things that people can do to address that stuff when they're putting content on their site, how many times keywords get mentioned or key phrases get mentioned. There's a certain amount of content. When you post an image, there's alt tags, and alt tags are kind of used for ADA compliance as well. So somebody that's blind can't see that picture, but the alt tag explains what that picture is. Well, that alt tag is still getting picked up by search engines. So it's reading that data. So it's a combination of doing stuff like that.
Yeah, is that a relatively new thing? Or is that?
No, alt tags been around for a long time.
Really?
It's just whether or not people used them or not. But now ADA compliance, having your website ADA compliant, you really need to use those alt tags because those lawsuits are coming. They've started out with the big corporations. Now they're trickling down to mid-sized businesses and smaller businesses. So
we talked a little bit about education and how important it is. There is a big debate going on right now, especially since COVID, with people staying home and college students, college age people, or people interested in college staying home to go to college. I guess the question is, how important is college or a college degree in the marketing field today? And I mentioned COVID, but I mean, I'd even go back before that. There's been so much information available on, YouTube and online courses and things like that. Can a person who's aspiring to be in the marketing business navigate all that without a formal education?
Yes, because of the ability to educate yourself online. I mean, there's plenty of online courses. There's plenty of podcasts. There's plenty of YouTube channels where if you want, pretty much anything you want to learn is out there. I think a formal education, I'll just go based on what my Uncle Rod told me. So I didn't have the opportunity to go to college. So I was working 2-3 jobs at a given time. So I was having to learn on the job, do a lot of on the job learning. And, my uncle and my aunt, brother and sister, not husband and wife, both of them said, look, my aunt had a degree, my uncle didn't. My aunt worked for CEOs of several different companies that she worked with. She said, look, they got their degrees in physical education, not finance. Mm-hmm. That degree was to show, hey, I could stick something out and commit and survive 4 years amongst partying or whatever else I was doing in my life at that time. So that part I think is important, but I also think it depends on what you're getting into. With marketing and advertising, a designer, for example, you can go to school and learn a lot, but if you don't have that natural knack inside you already, it doesn't matter how much schooling. If you don't have a design eye, no one's going to help blossom that into something better. If it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist.
Is that a natural talent? Or is it some kind of learned thing that happens, even if it happens at a young age? Does it happen in the womb, or does it happen somewhere along the way that starts to develop? Anything
you do, you practice, you're going to get better. Certainly, But you take a look at a kid that's drawing stickmen or whatever, age 5, may not know at that point that that's going to be a Picasso, but that person keeps at it. They've got the desire to keep at it. But there was something inside them to even draw that stick man. So that can be learned. You can get good with a camera, and understand lighting and exposure and all this. You can learn that stuff, but learning how to frame something and have an eye for where to position that image in the frame, I don't know. Part of it is just got to be in there,
What is the best feedback loop that you use to know when something is a hit? When and it can be anything from a blog post, so the copy that you write for a blog post, or that picture that has the right effect that you're looking for. I mean, what are you using to get that feedback loop? Is it the likes? Now that we have social media, is it the likes and things like that? Because we've only had social media the way we do for the last 5 or 10 years. You've been doing this a lot longer than that. What has it been that has directed your knack for design over the years?
It's always been the same, even before the web and social media. It's got to move you. It's got to move you. I mean, it's either going to make you smile or invoke some sort of emotion, or I want that. It's still that. And I think advertising marketing has always been that way. It has to invoke an emotion of some sort. I'm going to feel better if I get that, or, that makes me angry, or it makes me smile, makes me laugh. Reading good copy, it draws you in, Are you using, are you putting that out to kind of a sample audience on a regular basis to try to get it fine-tuned? Yeah. My company. Yeah. I mentioned this, and speak of the devil, there's Russell Johnson trying to call me. I run stuff by other people. And so with my company, we're very holistic in that approach. If we design an ad, whether or not it's going to be on the internet or print or whatnot, the office manager will look at that. The project manager will look at that. What's your take on that? And I did this years ago, and I had a couple of designers work for me, and that would drive them batshit crazy. They're just like, oh, well, they're not designers. They don't know.
Right.
No, they're the end user.
Maybe even more important.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, ultimately,
if it went over the end user's head and doesn't make me want to make that phone call or order that product, guess what? It looks cool.
I've written things before, and I got the criticism that I was using too big of words, for an example. I mean, I think that's actually a thing, right, on the internet, where if you're writing a blog about something or an educational article of some kind, you do want it to be written in a way that it's breaking the topic matter down in a way that somebody's going to be able to read it and understand it, right?
Sure. But, and there's also, I think the internet has become a little too lax as well. I mean, I get called word police if I go, you spelled that wrong, or it's there, THEIR, not THERE, and you get called out for being a word cop or word Nazi or whatever you want to call it. It's like, but you know what? That bothers me.
Well, that goes back to what we were talking about, and that people who do have some grammar and spelling sense still are going to judge, in an extent, whoever put that out, and they're going to say, okay, they obviously don't know how to spell, or they didn't spell that right, unless it was an intentional play on words or something like that. But no, it does have to be right at the end of the day, right? Grammatically right. It makes sense.
As close as possible. I mean, I make mistakes, and the last thing I want to do is, call other people out on theirs, and they go, well, didn't you spell that wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I did. Yeah. Anyways, when to use a colon and when to use a semicolon still throws me, but yeah.
So you have served over the years on a ton of boards, just to name a few: Police Activities League, Rotary Club, Act 2030, PCB Foundation, Children's Advocates Resource Endowment. The list goes on, by the way. What keeps you going back and being involved in organizations like that? What drives you to be involved in those things?
It helps other people. I mean, it's a purpose outside of yourself. I mean, it's something that I can make an impact on. I can see things from a different light or different angle. My experience, I see a lot of nonprofits get started. One of them I don't think you got down to was Rotary Club of Bakersfield, the oldest and largest Rotary in Bakersfield, for anybody's listening. But I had somebody come to me, and they took me to lunch and said, hey, this nonprofit really could use some help, and they could use some money, and they want to buy a vehicle, and your guys' club is kind of known as the check writing club, and at that time, so I went back to the board. I sat on the board at that time. I said, look, hey, this organization needs help. And for the first time, I think our president at the time was Harry Starkey. He goes, well, before we just go writing a check, how about we go down and check that place out? So me and Harry and Colleen McCauley, we went down and we checked out this because we wanted to see, if we wrote you a check, where's this money going to? How's it being used? What's your board of directors like? It was one of those moments that it was perfect. It was, out of all times we would have written a check, this one time we didn't. And it proved that's why we didn't write that check, because we went down there and we looked at it and we found out part of their board had been board members for 20 years. Didn't like change. Some of their new board members were young guys and young folks that were, energetic, but they weren't decision makers. They didn't have a network in the community wide enough to make things happen, to pick up phones and connect people.
Sure.
And so out of that, we said, you know what, there's a lot of nonprofits like this that they have the right intentions. So we started, we did for about a year, it was called the Nonprofit Leadership Forum. And so we bring in these nonprofits of different sizes, the small one-person operation to, Mendiburu Magic. I think we had at one point Boys and Girls Club representation, but they would sit with one guy and he would talk to them about board compliance, how to make sure that your nonprofit is compliant. Then they'd sit with me and Patty Houchin, and we would talk about how you market your event and your club and the look and feel. And so, we kind of taught them a little bit. That was impactful for me because it's like, oh my God, I could contribute here. I know something about this that can help this nonprofit. So I just keep doing it. I mean, you say many nonprofits I'm involved with because I've gotten experience from all these different ones that it helps them. I don't know, it's a good thing. So
it's obviously something that you're still involved with.
Oh yeah,
to this day. The other thing that strikes me, Dave, is that you've been involved in a lot of people's businesses, called in to do marketing for them. So you've probably seen, I don't know, hundreds of businesses over the years. Maybe you can give me a little bit about when it comes to interacting with those businesses, what are some of the traits of the ones that have been successful year in, year out, have made it, have done something that set themselves apart? And then, what sets those apart from the ones that didn't quite do as well?
The ones that don't undercapitalize themselves. If you don't have enough money to do something, do it right, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. The ones that are successful, and it's not like you have to have a ton of money to start out with. You can take small chunks. You've got to be realistic when you're going to deal with an agency, and you've got to be trusting of that agency. I'm coming to you because of your expertise. Therefore, trust me. When I ask you for a budget and you hem-haw around, it's like you're already starting our relationship where you don't trust me. Mm-hmm. That's a problem, because if I'm going to build you a house, or you got $1 million to dump in that house, or you got $50,000 to dump in that house, because there's going to be a difference in the house that you get. I need to know that. I'll build you a real nice $50,000 house if that's all I have to work with. I got $1 million. Well, we're gonna have some added little things on there, but I got to know what I'm working with. The ones that understand that, and the ones that do put trust in an agency's decisions, and ideally you're dealing with a group. When you're coming to me, you're not dealing with just Dave Plivelich. I mean, you're getting a team of experts that are, you're paying one price, but you're getting a team of experts. You've got to trust them. I mean, I got one new client, and he's turned out to be great, and I always thought, stay away from brand new companies because they just don't get it. And they do. They're concerned about every nickel and dime, but to the point where it hinders them. And, we revamped his logo, and he's like, oh, I noticed the letters are kind of touching a lot. It's kind of tight in there. He said, well, you ever look at FedEx or Amazon and see how close those letters are? Yeah, well, yeah. I said, well, so I took the time to go, well, let me explain kerning to you. All right, see that capital T and that capital A, or that capital V and that capital A? See how that big gap in there? So it almost looks like they're coming from two different words. We're just going to smush those in there, nestle them in a little bit. That's called kerning. He goes, so your designers think about the spacing between each letter? Yeah. All right. And so from that point on, he quit asking questions. He goes, you guys know what you're doing. You're putting a lot of thought into this. Yeah. Yeah, we are. We're not just whoop, whoop. So, but that makes a difference. And you can tell the difference between amateur work and quality work. And sometimes if you can't, you can set the two side by side. And if you don't know, there's still something subconscious going on. It's the same word, it's the same font, it's the same size. It's something about that's better. I don't know what it is, but it's better. That's where we're tapping into the subconscious mind to make that better. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I do. Can I rapid fire you a few closing questions before we wrap it up?
Fire away.
All right. So, best advice you ever gotten, or words to live by, or
don't give up. Don't give up. We're going to trip and fall now and then, and don't give up. Anybody that has any inkling of entrepreneurial spirit in you, if you're not having some failures here and there, you are not trying hard enough. You've got to learn from that stuff, but you definitely don't go, oh, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. That's it.
Best resource, be it a book, podcast, other than the R2 Cents podcast, of course, but any particular resource that's a regular go-to for you?
Yeah, there were a couple books in my life. One was Lencioni. I think you guys tried to interview him. We're trying to interview that guy. He did 5 Temptations of CEO. He was a Garces graduate. A short read, but it's a short read. Read that book, 5 Temptations of CEO. The other one, I can't remember the author, but The Tipping Point.
Oh, yeah. I know that book as well. Yeah, I can't think of the author either way. Lencioni? Is that, so he's a pretty regular speaker on a speaking circuit, too, and I think he comes around to, I don't know, somewhere locally once a year.
He came to Bakersfield. I saw him maybe 8-9 years ago. I think he was over at the Doubletree or whatever it was at the time, Red Lion Inn. But yeah, he's from Bakersfield, so I think his dad still lives there or something. But yeah, he's a phenomenal writer. He's written some great business books.
You've been doing business here in Bakersfield, Kern County for a long time. What's your favorite thing about this area? What keeps you here? What keeps you engaged in this town, in this community?
The people. People. Yeah, I mean, you can go into any part of town and walk in there and you're going to know somebody. Yeah, it really is. I love the fact that we can get to the beach or we can get to the mountains and go to the snow. When it's a clear day, it's just drop dead gorgeous. And it still has a small town feel to it. I mean, the people are genuine and they got your back. And I don't know how many times I've said this. I mean, I knew a guy that worked for Chevron, high up position. He had to move away, and he moved back to Bakersfield. And his biggest comment was, the one thing I learned while I was gone, this is the most giving town I've ever been in. People give. I mean, they just, they'll open up their pocket, and they get hit up by the same people all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just, I like that part of it.
Yeah, it is a big, small town.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, well, that's probably the most common answer I get to that question. And I know it's really is the answer, is my answer as well. It's just the people here keep you coming back for more. It's people you want to do business with. It's people you want to live next door to and things like that. Dave, it's been a great conversation. So after the show, if somebody wants to reach out to you and, learn more, bounce a few ideas off you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
The marcomgroup.com. or my promotional items line, marcombranding.com or our2cents.com. I've got contact info on all of those. So.
Well, Dave, welcome aboard to the Our 2 Cents team.
Thank you.
It's been a great conversation. Thanks a lot for coming in.
All right.
This show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burton with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, and Scott Hansen Real Estate Lender, Broker, and Investor. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or catch us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe